Welcome into the latest and greatest episode of the Hoops Boys podcast with your host with the most, James the Jet. I am America's favorite bitch-ass white boy, CProc. Our guest for Analysts, Gregors, and the Shaddillac. Gentlemen, it is the most wonderful time of the year for basketball heaven. March Madness is upon us, and I think Greg said this a number of weeks ago that this is going to be one of the most wide open tournaments we've seen in a while. So why don't we get right into it and start breaking down the brackets, as they say. You guys ready?
Ready.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
So let's start in the South, the number one overall seed, Alabama. And I remember catching a game from theirs in like November, December, and I'm like, wow, this goes really good. And you don't normally think of basketball when you think of Alabama. So despite the offseason drama with Brandon Miller and who's that other knucklehead that's
Darius Miles
now? Yeah. Is he like Darius Miles' son? like the original Darius Miles? Or is it just a total coincidence?
Well, if he was, I'm sure he disowned them at this point.
Despite all that off-season drama, are they the legitimate favorite in the tournament?
I definitely think they are. I mean, they have. If you watched, speaking of Brandon Miller, start with him. I mean, they're freshman phenom. If you've watched his development over the last 2 months, I mean, he's turned into an absolute superstar. They had a game at South Carolina. South Carolina is not a very good team, but it's college basketball. It's a home game. They were up for it. Went to overtime, and I mean, Miller just completely took over. He scored over 40, and for me, that was the game where he basically made it known, like in my opinion, he's the best player in college right now. When you have a star like that, they're big, they're super athletic, their guards are quick. I just think they bring athletically by far the most of the table, and I think they are definitely worthy of the top overall seed in the tournament.
Chad, agree, disagree?
I agree. I think Alabama, I've watched them over the past few weeks. I definitely watched that South Carolina game. I think Brandon Miller, he's going to be a top 3 pick in this upcoming draft. I'm not sure if he's the best player in college basketball. I think that might go to Zach Edey, just because he's just so big and you can't teach size. But Brandon Miller, he's definitely has a star, potential superstar. This could be, maybe it's a shining moment. Maybe people look at him and say, all right, now he's going to be the number 1-2 pick behind, Wembanyama. But he showed, I never even heard of the guy, till this year. So he's definitely, stepped his game up. He's got size, but he's like 6'8", lanky, got the range, athleticism. He's like, I don't know, maybe like a baby Durant type of player.
Very good comparison.
Yeah, I think him, if he gets hot, and his team, they can support him if he doesn't, get 30, 40 points a game. I think Alabama, could be the team to beat. And I never thought Alabama would be that. They're just a basketball school to me.
It's amazing too. Just quickly, he shoots over 40% from 3. And you see a guy like Durant. Comparison is an excellent one. To be that rangy, athletic, no one can stop him when he goes to the paint, and then to be able to do that, he on his best day, he's pretty much unguardable.
Now, one of the darlings early on in this college basketball season was College of Charleston. They were nationally ranked very early. They've got a sparkling 31-3 record. How legit of an upset alert are they in this South region? They're a 12-5, which of course is always a popular upset, and they face the winner of Virginia Furman. Virginia, of course, coming off of a pretty successful ACC tournament run. Is Charleston worthy of the praise they were getting earlier in the year. Chad, what you got?
Well, yeah, anytime like a smaller school could win, 30 plus games, they're certainly a threat. I'm just surprised that they only got a 12 seed. I really thought they would get, easily in the top 10 with their record. Um, don't know too much about San Diego State, but anytime you have a team that's, I believe, only lost 3 games the whole season, they they're probably much better than people think, even though they're not like kind of the national, team, a powerhouse team. I actually have in my bracket, going to the Sweet 16. So I'm rolling with Charleston.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they are a pretty legit squad. I agree with Chad. I felt they were a bit underseeded. They can score. I mean, they shoot the three well. The only issue I'd have, they rely on 3-point shooting. Obviously, when you chuck up that many threes, you also get a lot of offensive rebounds, which they do. They're deep. It's funny. I saw a stat. Their last 10 games, their 2 leading scorers are actually off the bench. They're both shooting over 50% from three. So they're legit. The only issue is it's a super contrast in styles with San Diego State, where San Diego State is, I mean, big, tough, physical. They're far more of a defensive squad. So this comes down to, our Tony Bradley, San Diego State point guard. He's a senior. He's a legit leader on that team. The question is, can Charleston, can they get that they don't get locked down by San Diego State defenders to actually get some threes in the air? If they can score early, and they can't play from San Diego State because that plays into their strength. But if they put some pressure on early and knock down shots, there's definitely a game to be had. So Charleston's legit. That they will provide a challenge to San Diego State for sure.
And speaking about, obviously, one of the big things about the NCAA tournament being right off the conference tournaments is it's always a stage for schools that are kind of mid-tier or schools that are high profile but may or may not have had the best season from historic examples, elevating themselves to getting a higher seed with a good run plus their pedigree. So did Virginia and Arizona really help themselves getting high seeds in this bracket? Arizona, of course, running the Pac-12 and ups and knocking off UCLA, and Virginia getting all the way to the ACC final. Greg.
I'll start with Arizona. Arizona's upside is immense, I find. As much as you'd love to see Princeton and the Ivy League, every blue moon is pulled. Their lack of size, I believe Princeton doesn't have someone probably taller than 6'7", 6'8" on the floor. Arizona's size is going to be overwhelming for them. That being said, I don't per se that I don't see that bottom half of that bracket as being easy. Missouri, Utah State, both can score a lot of points. Arizona's weakness would be on the D end. Well, obviously, if you go into a game and you're a bit porous, you have an opponent who can light up the scoreboard. And then you're looking at, on the other half, Creighton or possibly Baylor. So Arizona is definitely good enough to navigate the path, but I don't think they're going to have an easy game past the first round. Put it that way. As far as you brought up Virginia, I don't think Virginia is that strong personally. I mean, they bog down offensively quite often. I do think that their pod per se, if they got through Furman, which I don't think is guaranteed, I don't think San Diego State and Charleston either of them would be the worst matchup for them. So I think Virginia, to be honest, actually, if you look at the fives in the other region, you have Duke, you have some other strong ones. I actually think Virginia kind of, I don't want to say lucked out, but it's a better spot for them than if they could have been another part of the bracket. So they do have an avenue to move on. Not high in them, but they have an avenue. Until Alabama, but good luck with that.
Shadow, what you got on any benefits gained from Virginia and Arizona's conference tournament runs?
I'm like Greg. I don't believe in Virginia. They they can't score. They have like really no star. I feel like they can depend on, to get a bucket. I believe like their leading scorers are 12 points a game. They only have like three guys in double digits, and everybody else is, under that. They don't seem to me like they have any kind of NBA type players, but they do have really good coaching. I could say that. So coaching could bring you, to a Final Four alone. Um, I don't have Virginia, going too far. Like I said, I had Charleston, kind of upsetting them in the second round. As far as Arizona, they definitely surprised me by beating UCLA. They were down, most of that game in the Pac-12 championship. I actually woke up. I thought they were lost, and I saw that they won. And I was like, "What the hell?" Because they were down like 10 plus points up until like 5 minutes or so left in the game. Um, but they do. They got a good team. They have great scoring. They have like five guys scoring in double digits. So they could look to multiple guys with buckets in the game. And although I don't have them, winning like a national championship or anything, I do believe I have them going to the Elite Eight and losing to eventually Alabama. I think their scoring is going to be more than anybody can handle on their side of the bracket besides, Alabama, who of course, probably has the best player in college basketball, not named Edie, in my opinion.
One last thing, which on what Chad said as well about Arizona, they're very interesting in the sense that if you have watched them and use the game you just spoke about as an example, their best day is good enough to win the whole thing. When they're on and they're in tune offensively and not being lazy on the defensive end, they are good enough. But they do go through stretches where they almost look like a different team when they lost at home to Arizona State, which basically is the reason Arizona State made it. They go through stretches where they're getting gashed defensively or don't feel like they should. So for me, that team is very mercurial. They like I said, could win the whole thing. Would I be stunned if they took an early upset somewhere in it either? I would not be. But the talent level is very high for that squad.
East-wise, the number one seed is Purdue. And they have they're walking into a potential buzzsaw in the second round against American Athletic Conference champion Memphis, who came off a huge upset over Houston, who's been running the table as a number one school the entire season practically. Is Purdue on upset alert with a potential matchup against Memphis lurking not too far away? Chad, what you got first?
I say no. I think Memphis, kind of got lucky in their conference tournament when Sasser from Houston, went down. Otherwise, I really don't think they beat Houston. And I just think Purdue, you got the best player in the country. I think he's going to win the Player of the Year. He's definitely not athletic. He definitely probably won't do anything in the NBA, but in college, where you're just bigger than everybody else, and the game is not as fast, not as athletic. You could kind of stand around in the basket near the basket because not just about everybody could shoot. I don't think anybody could really do anything with them, and I don't think Memphis is really used to it. The size. And Purdue, they got great coaching also. I just think, Purdue is, I'll be surprised if they don't make it to the Final Four.
Craig, what you got?
I'm going to be completely on the opposite side of this. I feel like Purdue has been a different team for the negative the last few months. They went through a 3 out of 4 loss stretch about a month ago. Even in the Big Ten, which they won, if you watch late in the game again, Rutgers and then Penn State, they blew huge leads. That should have been a comfortable victory. And what you noticed in that, they pressed their backcourt. The guards struggled immensely to get the ball across half court. They had turnover after turnover. Quite frankly, I actually don't see. So add a caveat. We're not mentioning Florida Atlantic. Memphis got no seeding bonus by getting Florida Atlantic. I thought Florida Atlantic would actually been seeded a bit higher than number 9. So that game is very difficult, but I'm going to pick Memphis to get through. And I actually think Memphis on that court with Purdue is actually the better team. Kendrick Davis, who, if people are not familiar with him, he's worthy of first-team All-American consideration. 22 points a game, almost 6 assists, money from the free throw line. He's over 85%. So if that's a close game, he's going to have the ball in his hands. He's going to knock down everything at the free throw line. Their second best player, DeAndre Williams, he's basically the dad of the team. He's 26 years old, but he's a leader. He's a leader on the court and obviously off. He averages 18 and 8. They're super athletic. I really do think Memphis in that matchup is flat out the better team, and I'm taking Memphis to beat Purdue in the second round.
Very, very solid. Now, of course, there's a school in the East region that is Greg's favorite topic to talk about in college basketball, and that is the Duke Blue Devils. They started out very up and down, a little struggling, getting used to a new coach, getting used to a lot of young talent, and sure enough, they turned it on. They turned it into high gear at some point in the second half of the season and went on a run all the way to the ACC title. I should say conference tournament title. So how hot is Duke? How good is Duke? And is this just kind of like a little bit of peaking too early because of all the factors they have going against them? Or are they actually legit and can pull off some typical Duke magic in a tournament?
Well, if you want me to start on this painful topic, I gladly will commiserate here.
It's your favorite topic to talk about. You have to start.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's like stabbing yourself in the retina. That's how much of a favorite it is of mine. And to my chagrin, my extreme chagrin, again, I will say this. I think they actually are a little underrated right now. I think 5 seed was underseeded. If you watch them from the beginning of the year, they could not win a road game, period. I mean, they were losing by a good amount. Again, they're primarily freshmen. The core of that team is underclassmen. They've turned it around. I mean, they've been a much better team. Mind you, the ACC has been down, but they have legit talent. They have McDonald Americans left and right. Something I've seen too, Filipowski, when they beat Carolina before the ACC tournament, he went up against Baycott. He went up against and he dominated down low. I feel like he brings a toughness element that I feel like that team hasn't really had in past years. And quite frankly, when you look at the draw they got, now, mind you, Oral Roberts is supreme as a 12 seed, and that is not a cakewalk. But assuming they do get through that, if they do, they're looking at possibly Tennessee in the next game, who lost their point guard for the year to an injury a couple of weeks ago. Tennessee's offense struggled with him. They obviously have struggled even more so without. And then the top half, I'm of the belief, let's say Purdue did get through. I think Purdue's by far the weakest of the 1 seeds. So quite frankly, Duke has a really good, as much as they're underseeded at the 5, their side of that bracket is very manageable. And I would not be surprised, unfortunately, see Duke go pretty far. I'm actually higher on them than I've been in past years. I think they're legit. Playing their best ball of the year right now as well. They're peaking.
Shad, you got some salt to rub in the wound for him?
I'm not going to say salt in the wound, but I think this is probably as good as Duke is going to get for a while. I think they're going to have the plunge like North Carolina did. It's good, a year or so after your legendary coach retires, because you still got his philosophy, his values, he's probably still around the program. But after this year, I think they plummet no matter, who stays on the team. But yes, I think Duke, they're hot. I think they won their winning streak of like 7-8 games, probably more than that, probably closer to 10 games. But at the same time, like Greg was saying, the ACC is down. Like any other year, the ACC would have had a lot more teams in, especially with the records that they have. So it kind of could be fool's gold. Beating a team like North Carolina. I know you beat them twice, but that's a team, that didn't even make a tournament. You did beat, Virginia, but as we said, like it sounds like neither one of us have any confidence in Virginia. Greg said he doesn't have any confidence in Miami. So it's talking about Duke beating a bunch of teams that, seem like they aren't like real contenders. So how good are they? Yes, they have, Filipowski and these other kids. But like I said, I don't think they have enough scoring. I don't think they have the coaching. I think once they get past that first round, I think they're going to have, the less superior coaches from there on out coaching. So I think that definitely plays a factor. And that ultimately, dooms Duke, I would say in the Sweet 16 at least.
Marquette, the Big East champ. This is a very good school that no one is really talking about. Are they the unsung, unofficial 1 seed? Like, do they have a legit chance to be in the mix to win this thing? And they're kind of fallen by the wayside because of all the attention the 1 seeds have gotten all year, rightfully so. Chad.
Well, they got, a great coach, and Shaka Smart, who was a darling of the tournament years ago. But I kind of think they're a little bit overrated. I don't see them, winning a bunch of games in this tournament. I almost wanted to pick, Vermont against them. But, I talked myself out of it.
Wow.
Only reason I could see them getting farther than, the Sweet 16 is because to me, their side of the bracket doesn't really scare me too much. So you're facing kind of mediocre teams. I think Vermont could upset them. If not, then I could see them. They're definitely not making it past, I would say like the other side of the bracket, like the Purdue, the Tennessee, the Duke, the Memphis, whoever they got to face coming out of that. I think this is probably like the pretender side of the entire tournament where whoever comes out of that is probably going to get smacked by about 20 points, in the Elite Eight.
Shocker, Duke gets seeded in the easiest bracket.
No, I think Duke's is tough. The top half that they have, but the bottom half, I think it's pretty soft.
Please.
I tried to tie it all together. I want to tie it all together.
I know. It is, as much as I laugh when I looked at the bracket. So I'm a little bit with Shad. I love Marquette. I love what they do. Shaka's done a great job. Kolek, the point guard, you can make an argument, was the best point guard in the country this year. Great player. There's a caveat to this. If you watched the Big East tournament, they're not a great team defensively. If you watch the Big East tournament, they barely escaped St. John's late in that game. St. John's had them to the wire. They were getting into the paint pretty much at will late in that game. Same the next game, and it's not to cut on Marquette, but the UConn game. If they face a team with size and in the paint, they had basically 3 guys with 4 fouls with about 7 minutes left. I think UConn didn't execute offensively smartly down the stretch, and they kind of gave Marquette a break. But the point is this: I love Marquette. They have a couple of stars on that squad, but I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced if they're not knocking down shots at a consistent level, which a lot of these teams go through that in the tournament. I'm not convinced that they're going to get through that. So again, they have star power with Cam Jones and Kolek, good coach. I'm a little leery though. I feel like recency effect with winning the Big East tournament. And again, they won the regular season as well. So I don't mean to give any shade to them, and I will be rooting for them. I'm not convinced that they get through that. They'd be looking at, just physical tough teams. I'm looking potentially Michigan State, then maybe a Kansas State or Kentucky. I think that's a tough road for them. I don't necessarily love the matchups for them going forward, but I will be rooting. They're a fun team to watch.
James the Jet, follow up or anything else to push these guys on?
In the East region?
East region, yes.
I really like Memphis. Think they're a pretty good team, especially since they beat the number 1 team twice I think they're pretty dangerous. So I'll go Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that if that's our regional final? Who are we? Who should be the favorite to come out of that? Memphis, Marquette.
I'm gonna pick Memphis.
That's a tough one. The favorite would be Marquette. Just based on body of work over the season. I probably would take Memphis myself. I really think Memphis, to me, is it a case that because they played in the American, that they're being like under-respected because of that. But if you watch their body of work in a lot of the games they played, even the three Houston games, I mean, they played them well in all three of them. And the one in Houston that they basically had one possession game left. They played that without Kendrick Davis, who was by far the player. I just think Memphis is kind of a lurking giant, to be honest. I think they're a lot better than people realize. Again, a brutal first game, and this is the beauty of the tournament. I would not be stunned if Florida Atlantic is the one that gets through to play Purdue. So, but Memphis, I think I think they're a factor.
Shad, you want to round that out and keep Memphis undefeated in the discussion?
No, I like I said, I think Memphis is a very overrated team. I think Penny Hardaway is a very overrated coach. I feel like he's always underachieved with his players that he's had. He gets like these top, 5-star players, and Memphis should be like, the best team out of that conference right there with Houston, like top 5, top 10 rated team, and they're always, maybe a little bit better than average. And then his big players either leave or they transfer out. So I think he gets outcoached by Purdue, because I don't think they have the size to, like I said, be with Edey. And then I think if they do somehow get past it, I think Shaka Smart coaches circles around them and they get blown out.
Good to see that. Midwest time. Houston was the number one school for a good long chunk of this season. And they are the number one seed here in the Midwest region. Are they as good as they've been all year, or was it a little bit of a break in the armor losing to Memphis, and that was maybe a glimpse into who they really are? Are we setting ourselves up for disappointment?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it all depends on the health of Sasser. He seems like to me he'd be a All-American player, scores 17 points a game. Him getting hurt, I think he'll definitely play in the tournament, but who knows if it'd be anywhere near 100%. He didn't play in that in that conference final. I think they have good coaching with Sampson. I think they have a good pedigree, what they've done the past few years. A lot of those players are still on the team. And I think kind of the bracket that they have, they really don't. I mean, I think they win easily the first 2 rounds, even if Sasser's not there. I think it probably gets tough if they have to play in Miami and on a Texas, but I think those are probably the only 2 teams I feel like that could really, beat them at their own game in this bracket. So only thing that scares me is Sasser. If Sasser was there, I would say they definitely are Final Four team.
Greg, what you got on Houston?
That's what Chad said. You have to throw the conference tournament final out. And then even in that, quite frankly, they were getting blown out. They were down 20 plus. They got it down to 3 at one point. The Sasser being out, he's basically their engine. I mean, you can't take him off the team and expect them to be the same. And again, as I said, and so I really. You get the feeling that they held Sasser out, like he was practicing early that day. I think they just decided, and wisely so, like it's not worth furthering this injury. They have a bigger fish to fry later on. So I think Houston, for their money's worth, they've been as complete a performing team as anyone in the country. They never take a playoff. They're fundamentally sound, rebounding, defense. The only issue is, and it's quite frankly, it's the style of play. They get bogged down offensively. They played a very slow tempo. So the thing you would concern you about Houston is, if they do come up against a team that's lighting up from three, and all of a sudden, they have to speed up the pace. It's just not the way they want to play. But that being said, Houston is a very good team. They're complete. They're deep. I totally love the way they play. And Sampson's a very good coach. He's proven here. So they're a legit number one, completely worthy. I absolutely see them going to Final Four and beyond. They're a legit squad. Sasser back will, and I think he will be. That will change that entire dynamic. I don't read too much into that.
Another school that we talked about, schools benefiting from big conference tournament runs. Another one that had a huge conference tournament one was, of course, Texas. They got hot. They knocked off Kansas. Did that Big 12 run help ensure them locking up a 2 seed? Greg?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, they were definitely on the line of the two. I think they probably could have even lost that tournament final and still had the 2. But if let's say they bowed out first round, they may have slipped down to 3 seed. So they weren't going to move too far. Their body of work was pretty substantial to begin with. But no doubt, I mean, you can ignore the Big 12 had considered the best for rightfully so, the best conference in America this year. And, they went out and handled business completely and beat Kansas, who is, considered obviously one of their number 1 seed. You couldn't deny them the 2 seed. So I think that definitely did. It cemented the 2 if it was in question. Yes.
Chad, thoughts on Texas?
I think definitely the conference tournament, gave them a higher seed than they actually were. I kind of disagree with Greg, because I think they were struggling the past month or so before the conference tournament. They were playing like 500 ball, in conference play the last, 8 or 9 games. I think they were around 500. I think if they didn't, win the conference championship or get to it, they were probably looking at like a 4 seed, in my opinion, 4 or 5 maybe. I know their record looks good, but I think that, like they always say, the committee takes in consideration how you looked lately. And like the past month, I would say January, February, like end of January, end of February, they were like pretty much like a 500 team. So that, to me, they would have never gotten close to a 2 seed. I think they probably would have been like a 4 at best, maybe like a 5. So they're the team that probably benefited the most from the conference tournament.
Well, one thing to add on that, Chad, and this part I'm agree with. The question, what's very interesting with them is the question all year was they were a complete different team away from home. They had lost 4 straight road games in the Big 12 towards the end of the season. So obviously in the committee's eyes, it was like, okay, well, what are they going to do on a neutral court with a tournament? And obviously they played some of their best ball on that. So they answered some questions, put it that way.
A sore thumb for me in this region is IU. Why is IU a 4 seed? I don't remember the last time IU was a 4 seed. They had a good year, but I don't know if I thought it was good enough for them to be a 4. Is that a legit seed, or did they just kind of back their way into a top 4 seed in this region? Greg?
I think it's a little overseeded personally. On the flip side, they have immense talent. They have lottery talent and Trace Thompson. It's weird. You can look at it in 2 different ways here. Yes, I think they were lucky to get a 4 seed. They played a game at home against Iowa, which was an important game in the Big Ten for seeding. The basically 2 through 9 was all bunched up within a game or 2, and they went and got destroyed. Iowa at home, 90-68. Like it almost looked like they were. I don't want to say they weren't interested, but just they didn't get any loose ball. They got bludgeoned. So sometimes you watch this team and you don't. The talent is definitely there. Sorry, Trace. Jackson Davis. I mean, he's definitely like he's a superstar. He's an All-American. And then other days you watch them and you're just like you don't understand what are they disinterested. So I think we're given a favor by the 4 seed, but big caveat here. Their bracket, they did not get any favors because Kent State is a very good team. So, if be a 4 seed and get a team with that much potential in Kent State, I believe it's only a 4-point favorite they are, and that's that they can really play. So, look ways, like I said, fortunate to get a 4, but not with what they have to face. So that's my take on them. They have a wide range of outcomes. If you're filling out your brackets, or that team could win 3 games, they could just as easily lose and get blown out on day 1. So I'm going to bet against the latter. Just for me, and I think you guys probably agree, when you've now played 30 plus games and your MO is inconsistency, which that's what it's been. I don't see why all of a sudden now, right? I mean, that is their thing. They've had the talent. We knew that from the first week, but they have a game out of every 3 or 4. They're absolutely horrible. I don't necessarily see that switch getting turned on and then making a run. With that being said,
Shad, pretender, contender for IU?
Boy. I mean, I'll speak on the seeding part first. I definitely think they got a favorable seed. I think if they did not beat Purdue twice, I'm not even sure they'd be in the tournament. So for them to even get a 4 seed, that's definitely baffling. You're right about that. Do I see them as a contender? I mean, you look, they beat, Purdue twice. They beat Rutgers, who is very scrappy. They beat Wisconsin, but at the same time, I mean, they did beat North Carolina when North Carolina was kind of in their free fall, back in November, but they're still a top team. They did lose to teams like Arizona and Kansas. So it's like it's like a coin flip, like Greg was saying. Some days it looked like, a top 5 team. They got one of the top 5 players in Jackson Davis. And the next time they're getting blown out, by, Kansas by, 20 plus points, and Arizona by 15 plus points, and Rutgers by 15, and, Michigan State by 15. And you don't know where you're going to get their Jekyll and Hyde. At their best, yeah, they can make a Final Four run because they got a top player in the country. But I think I have them going. I have them going to the second round, but then losing to Miami.
I kind of don't want to ask the next question I had because I think we already firmly established that the previous bracket, the East region, is the easiest path. So I kind of don't want to ask if this one's the easiest, because when I was looking at it first, this one stood out to me because we have all these question marks, but I don't think I think after our discussion so far tonight, it's I don't think the Midwest is the easiest one by any stretch.
I don't think so at all. And just like when you look at just a very quick bottom half of that bracket, you're looking at it as Xavier, A&M, and Penn State, both very hot down the stretch. So Iowa State, who's pure D. The point is that is not, especially that bottom, even the top. Like I said, the 12 and 13, Drake and Kent State, those are both really good teams. So that is not an easy bracket at all. Actually, it's not. There's some really good squads in that bracket.
James the Jet, any nuggets out of the Midwest before we move on to our final region?
I think a team to look out for in the Midwest region is Kent State. I think they're scrappy and they got the potential to cause some upsets.
And they have the beneficiary of going up against the aforementioned IU in the first round.
Right.
And their best player is named Sincere, and that's a good thing. That's going to be a sincere effort you get out of that. Really sincere Curry. He's actually a very good player. He's going to be fun to watch. He'll give Indiana some problems.
All righty, the West, last but not least, defending champ Kansas. What are their odds for a repeat here, Shad?
Um, I don't expect them to get to the national championship, but I don't expect them to, be out first round. I believe I have them, going out in the Elite Eight. They have two excellent players on that team. They have Jalen Wilson, I believe, who won a Conference Player of the Year or is going to win Conference Player of the Year, and they have Grady Dick, who's probably going to be
your favorite.
Yeah, Grady Dick's my favorite. Who's probably going to be, definitely a first round pick, maybe a lottery pick in this upcoming draft. So they have two legit NBA talents. Plus, they have a coach who I think is going to be there most of the tournament, or a good portion of the tournament, depending on his health, Bill Self. It's actually a surprise that they've been this good. I thought they would, if you'd have told me them and North Carolina switched places, I wouldn't have blinked an eye. If you had told me Kansas, hey, they didn't make the tournament, beginning of this year, I wouldn't have, blamed anybody. But Kansas, I think they have a good shot. I just think they run into a team that are a little bit better than them. They'll have a little bit more depth than them and have a little bit more experience than them. But they're a good team. If you told me they do go back to back, I'd be kind of surprised, but I wouldn't be totally in shock.
Gregors, what you got for Rock Chalk Jayhawk?
So, listen, let me preface this by saying their body of work, considering what they lost, has been unbelievable. I think by far this is the toughest bracket in the region by a lot. So basically, whomever the first one seed would be, I would say would struggle to get out of this period. So it's no cut on Kansas. But I will say they're not as physical as years past. McCullough, who is basically essential to them, he transferred from Texas Tech. He does all the dirty work. He gets boards. He's a very underrated player. If he's not at 100%, that's a huge loss for them. Because, like I said, as good as they are, they're not overly physical. I think that's by far the toughest bracket. I mean, so you're looking at Arkansas has first-round picks littered on their team as a potential second-round game. Then it's possibly UConn, St. Mary's, Gonzaga, and UCLA at the bottom. I think Kansas, again, no discredit to them, but I don't think they're as good as last year, just pure talent-wise. I don't believe they are. Not as physical, and they're going to run into some really, really good teams in that bracket. So for that reason, I do not envision Kansas making it back to the Final Four and repeating.
Is that a harder region to get through than the South?
I personally think it's by far the hardest period. I mean, I literally can look at even some of the double-digit seeds. Like, not that I expect Boise, for instance, to go to the Final Four, but Boise is a 10. You have VCU, who is red hot as a 12. St. Mary's, who quite frankly didn't play great down the stretch, but you can make a case they were underseeded. Nobody wants UConn as the 4 there. Everyone knows UConn. Look at the metrics; they're literally considered a top 5 team. It's a gauntlet. So I mean, I personally think that is by far the toughest. And even Gonzaga goes into this tournament. I think they have a different mindset. There's no doubt they've had to have felt a little pressure the last number of years. They're usually the overall seed. They're still the top scoring team in the nation. No, I don't think they're good, but there's also that element. It's college. They have a little chip on their shoulder, and they don't have that pressure. So I just think there's so many difficult games in that whole bracket. That's for me, that's by far the toughest. And TCU, I'm leaving them out. TCU could man for man be the most physically talented team in the Big 12. So I really do think that bracket is absolutely loaded.
As far as a school near and dear to your heart, the UConn Huskies, and a school you always seem to like rooting for in the tournament, Iona. Break down that matchup, Huskies versus Gales.
There is not – okay, I think UConn's size, I mean, that's clear and present. I mean, Sinogo and Klingon, when you have a 7-footer who's very good, who comes off the bench for you, I personally think that will present Iona too much of a problem. But with that being said, Iona's very good defensively, especially the guard spots. They're very good against the 3. UConn is, has a lot of, they put up a lot of 3-pointers themselves. if Iona can hang in there defensively and not get destroyed on the boards, which I think push comes to shove, that will be the difference in the game. Iona is a pretty decent team. So I as much as I do think UConn gets through this, would I think it's a monumental upset if things didn't go the Huskies' way? I would not. But again, I think size over 40 minutes will just be too much for Iona to overcome. But their guards will present some problems. UConn can struggle a bit in the half court. Newton, the guard, he's their point guard. Very good player, but he's more of a combo guard. So I think they could force some turnovers and get some bad possessions out of UConn, but the size is going to be a lot for them to handle.
Shad, you've been higher on the Huskies in the last year and a half than I think at any point I've known you in our entire lives. What do you think? Do you want to get back to your roots and say Iona's going to give them a challenge, or do you think UConn's set up pretty well here?
No, I do think Iona gets them a challenge. I did think if the tournament started in like at the end of December, I would have probably bet all my money on the Huskies because they look unbelievable at that point. January, they did go through kind of a lull where they lost, something like 7 out of like 9 games or something close to that. They seem to be getting back on track. To me, they've got a lot of depth. They seem to be going like 9 or 10 deep, on their bench. And like Greg was saying, they have size. They have a 7-foot plus guy, coming off the bench who might go to the NBA in like a year or two. I really think, UConn surprised me. Like I said, I think they have great potential, to go to the Final Four. I just think they're probably missing, that real star player, that, kind of these other top, tier C's, number 1s, number 2 seeds have. That's the only reason I don't kind of have them going all the way, but I do have them going far. I'm not saying they're going to blow out every team, and win, by double digits every game, but I think they get to, at least the Elite 8.
Greg brought it up a minute ago. Shad, is everyone forgetting about Gonzaga in this bracket? Every year we get into the tournament time, it's like, oh, what's Gonzaga going to do? What's Gonzaga going to do? And this year, nobody's talking about Gonzaga.
I really do think so. Oh, sorry, Chad. Chad, you go first.
No, go ahead.
I think the answer is yes. I mean, again, they still have here to me is the difference. So Drew Timme, who is going to be first team All-American once again, which I said, Julian Strouder, the second half of the season for Gonzaga, has turned into a completely different player where he's played himself into possibly a first-round draft pick when he wasn't even a starter the first couple of years. They've down the stretch, I mean, they've been bludgeoning people. Like I'm giving a quick glance now. They haven't had a game within less than 7-8 points in a couple of months since their loss in overtime to St. Mary's, who's a very good squad. So, I mean, again, they don't have that pressure. They can score with the best of them. They beat Alabama early in the year. They beat Kent State at tournament time. They had a 1-point loss to Baylor. The only blip, they blasted Kentucky. The point is that, yes, defensively, I don't know if they can last the whole way. But a team who has that talent and can score like that, of course. That again, they're still college kids, right? That pressure mantle is gone from them, and I think they're going to play free and loose. And I would expect a good performance out of them.
I agree. Gonzaga's a good team, but I feel like we say the same thing every year. They got all this talent. They rolled over their conference. They rolled over whoever they played, and they make it to the Sweet 16, and then it's just like they get blown out or they lose to a team that they should have beaten, even though they got the better talent, the better team that's been together 3 or 4 years. It seemed like every year they got a team that's been together for 3 to 4 years. To me, it's just fatigue. I can't trust them. They got all the talent in the world. They got Drew Timme, who seems like he's been there for about 10 years. He's like and they got a great coach in Mark Few. It's just they can never just get over the hump. And the hump to me with them is a national championship. And until I see it, I don't know. I'm just gonna assume that Gonzaga is just gonna lose probably in Sweet 16, that area. But I have them having an upset, which I could probably go into a little bit later.
Oh, a tease. All right, Greg got a little antsy on that one. So, Shad, you can lead off the next question. Did UCLA cost themselves a 1 seed with the loss in the Pac-12 title game?
I'm gonna say no. Only because Purdue, I think, was obviously gonna get one. I think Alabama was obviously gonna get one. Houston was, gonna get one pretty much regardless. I guess maybe if they won, maybe it would have been tossed up because of Kansas. But I think just UCLA was not as good as the other teams. I think regardless if they would have won, they still would have been probably number 2. And maybe if they would have lost earlier, they probably could have maybe even dropped down to a 3 or a 3 or maybe even a 4. So to me, for them to get a number 1 seed, I think they would have had to be a number 1 seed, regardless, win or loss. And I think if you're dependent on your conference championship to be a number 1 seed, then you're probably not a number 1 seed.
Fair logic right there.
Great logic.
Greg, what say you?
So I think even more so, and the committee has said over the years they do take this into consideration. I think the injury to Jalen Clark is what, in actuality, cost them the 1 seed. Jalen Clark was a Defensive Player of the Year in the Pac-12. He's obviously a huge piece of that team. So if there was a debate with them and Purdue, which there was, they won't keep a team out of a tournament because of that, but they will affect their seeding on that. And I think UCLA losing Jalen Clark was actually the bigger factor in that. So whether or not UCLA won that game, I think they were on the fence with Purdue. With Purdue winning the Big Ten, it wasn't going to matter. I think they were going to put them as the 2 seed regardless.
That's all the nitty-gritty, partner. Let's talk about some fun stuff. What we got?
Well, we got some Cinderella teams. Me being a college basketball noob, and I normally make a bracket every year. If I was looking for some bracket busters, which teams would come to mind? Greg, let's start with you.
So I think one of my favorites, and sometimes for myself, there's teams you like and you hope they get seated in a place where they have a chance to advance. For me, that happened with Drake. I think Drake has been playing their best ball of the year. They're going to present a real problem in that side of the bracket. And I don't want to see better. I'm not cheering an injury here, but Miami's big man went out in the ACC championship, and without him, Miami's weakness is rebounding. Without him, that is a huge factor. It changed the ACC championship. So as I think Drake and Miami was a toss-up prior, I actually think Drake is a better team going in that game if Miami's big man is out. I also think, again, we just touched on Indiana, and I like Kent State. I think Drake, even if it is Indiana, I think Drake is good enough to beat Indiana as well. So for me, I see Drake as the 12 seed going to the Sweet 16. That would be my I really think they have that potential. They remind me of a little, not the same style of play, but you remember Loyola Chicago. They kind of have that kind of swag to them. And when they heat up, like when they played the title game against Bradley, I mean, if you went for a cup of water and came back 5 minutes later, they were up 30. So I just think Drake is playing at a very high level. I think that's the team as a double-digit seed. I think they'll go to the Sweet 16.
Nice. Shad, help me out, brother. What we got?
I kind of touched on one earlier. Charleston. So a team that can win 30 games to be ranked as a 12 seed, I think they could go on a Cinderella run. Do I think they get past the Sweet 16? No, but if they come out the first weekend, I definitely wouldn't be surprised. My other upset or darling is a team that we just talked about. Going against a team we just talked about is Grand Canyon. Um, they they seem to be the team that's very hot, coming in that nobody's going to think about. Um, they won, pretty much, I think, 11 of their last 12 or in that range, even though one of them was by forfeit to New Mexico State. They're a team that has been consistently scoring in the 80s. And I think you're going to need to score to, play against a Gonzaga. And I think, they could beat a Gonzaga because I think Gonzaga might be taking them lightly. I think Gonzaga, is always one of those teams that always thinks, oh, we're going to get out the first round easily. We've been getting out the first round, since the beginning of time, with our 10-year chemistry veterans with Drew Timme and, all that.
Yeah.
But it seems like Grand Canyon's always been a solid team, even though they fired, Dan Marley a few years ago, which, broke my heart.
Thunder Dan.
But they do have, 4 double-digit scorers. They seem to be a team that shoots well. It seems like they have, about 5 or 6 players who shoot 40% or better from 3-point range. So it's a team that, Gonzaga could be shocked by, and they can make a run. I think if they beat, Gonzaga, they could definitely beat, TCU or whoever comes out of that 6-11 seed. I don't see them getting it past, a UCLA just because of UCLA's experience and, the depth that they have and the players that they have. But they can make a run to the Sweet 16.
Chase, 2 little things too while we're on that. Something what Chad said, and exactly right. A lot of the times, as much as, and I mean, I'm the loser who watches games in the smallest conference that their own students don't even watch. A lot of these teams that that go ahead and bring these upsets are ones that no one are talking about. So trying to look for that, I'm looking at someone that I haven't heard in UCal Santa Barbara over Baylor. Baylor the last few months, this stat alone tells me, and I know Iowa State's very good. They got out rebounded 44-17 in that game. That is ridiculous. They've had a significant issue defensively in the paint on the boards. And Tchamwa Tchatchoua serves as their big man. He's been banged up. He's not fully healthy. I could see a team like Baylor going down early because as good as their guards are, if they're not shooting well that night, that's ripe for a recipe for a team that, like I said, if they can't get rebounds, Santa Barbara will get second chances. I think that's someone to at least keep an eye on that no one's really talked about. I wouldn't write off Santa Barbara.
You bring them up almost as much as you bring up Iona, so we're gonna start calling you Gaucho Greg.
It's as much sometimes, but it's as much sometimes. Like I said, it's going at Baylor's weakness. That's it. So I mean, it was stunning if you watched that Big 12 tournament game, but Iowa State, they couldn't get a rebound. Iowa State, who can't shoot, was the reason they were scoring is because they were getting 4 shots every possession. So I think that's an issue that's not going to be cured overnight.
For
Partner,
me,
anything?
Yeah, for me, I really want to be like loyal to my newfound Palmetto roots and go with Charleston or Furman, but I just feel like they're gonna run into that buzzsaw that is Bama, and it's not gonna. And could they run with them? Probably, but are they gonna get by them? I don't know. So I'm actually going to go with one that you asked about before. I'm going to go with Kent State because I know that's going up against Greg's darling Drake, but whoever gets out of that potential second round matchup is going to go up against a shaky Houston as we talked about. And by the time they get up to Texas might be beat up a little bit. So I'm like Kent could be an option too.
Nice. Well, that kind of covers like the brackets. Now let's get into some degenerate gambling. As a squad, we came up with a criteria on things that we're gonna pick. We have totals, a 3-team parlay, and then also an upset special. I guess I'll start with mine's. Let me see. I remember what I picked. My 3-team parlay would be Houston over Indiana. Right, Penn State and Kent State. And then my upset special is Kent State over Duke. And then I took the over in that game as well for my totals.
Oral over Duke.
I mean, sorry, Oral over Duke. Scatterbrain.
We love some oral.
Don't we all? Don't we all?
I guess we're not PG. I guess we're not rated PG anymore.
Oh, sorry about that.
I'm gonna go a little out of the box for my upset. I'm gonna go with one of the play-in teams, Arizona State. They'll get out of the play-in and then they'll upset TCU. I just remember there was one game earlier in the season, and it may have been during one of our previous off air of one of our previous episodes. And Greg was like, Arizona, I forgot who they beat, but they said like they may have just saved their season with that particular victory. So that Arizona State's kind of stuck in my head, and they're usually in the back of my head anyway. Like ever since the Ike Diago.
Yeah, they hit a 60-footer a few weeks ago at the buzzer at Arizona to win. And if they didn't hit that shot, legit, it was amazing. If they didn't hit that shot, they're not in the tournament. They were not going to be in that tournament. That got them in.
Yeah, that broke my heart that day.
Why, you're a Wildcat fan now?
Yeah, when I have them in as a bet, yes, I do. Yes, I am. Whatever team I'm betting on, I'm a fan.
Right.
Yeah, this is the gambling segment, isn't it?
That's true. It is. And then my parlay, I'm also taking Penn State. I thought that it was a really impressive run. Unfortunately, they're going up against A&M, who also had a really impressive conference tournament run. But I mean, Penn State just looked really scrappy, and maybe it looks scrappy because Purdue's just not that good. But I'll take it. I'll take it one way or the other. So I'll take Penn State as well. I'll take Duke. Sorry, partner, going against your oral pick. I'll put Duke in my parlay, and I gotta have one kind of quote unquote easy, right? Easy money in there. So I'll take Marquette over UVM. And then the totals, they were talking on the selection show. I forget whether it was referring to one of the first round matchups between SDSU and Charleston, or Virginia and Furman, or the potential second round matchup between Charleston and potentially Furman. And they were saying the first team to 120 wins. I'm like, damn, they could all score. So I'm thinking, so like, you know what? Take the overs in anything that Charleston and Furman play. Charleston's got a number at 141.5. Furman's got a number at 132. And I think those are the lowest two of the totals that we all are taking in this segment. So I'm like, shit, load up on the overs in both of them. Greg Shad, who wants to go first? What are your picks?
I'll go. My 3-team parlay, my easy, kind of slam dunk pick is UCLA minus 4,000 against UNC Asheville. What?
Is it literally 4,000? Is that the money line?
Yeah, minus 4,000 money line. My second pick it's kind of a toss-up when you kind of think of it. It's minus 128 for Miami money line against Drake. And my third one is an upset. It's upset on plus 184. It's Charleston against San Diego State. So for those three combined, it'll be plus 418. So If you bet $10, you'll win $41.85. And got to talk about my under over real quick. I think this might be the highest scoring game, on the first round. It's two high scoring teams. We talked about them earlier. Gonzaga and Grand Canyon the under over is 155.5. And don't be surprised if it goes to if they score 170. Even if it's Gonzaga scoring 100 and Grand Canyon scoring 70.
It happened.
Doesn't that go against your upset special though?
It does, but hey, not all upsets happen. You know that.
That's right.
So for my 3-team parlay, I'm going to start off with one of my favorite teams in the entire tournament, Utah State. Utah State was considered on the bubble and last four in, first four out for months and months, and it was infuriating me because I feel like if the committee had actually been fully watching their games, this team is excellent offensively. I mean, they can shoot the ball. They have bigs who can shoot the ball. They run amazing sets. They're ranked top 15 in efficiency offensively. So I'm going to take them minus the 2 over Missouri. Something I alluded to prior. I love Drake going in this tournament. I love the matchup, especially if Miami's big guy is out. They're getting 2.5. I'm going to take that. I'm going to go against Tennessee and take Louisiana Lafayette getting double digits, plus 10.5. Again, with Tennessee's offense, without their point guard, they weren't amazing or prolific to begin with. I just think a team that struggles offensively to cover a 10.5 point spread seems like a lot to me. If you basically, I'm going to throw 100 on that will pay out $568.75. And I'll be ready to go for the second round. For my over, I'm going to go back to Utah State. So if for everyone who just wants to see an entertaining game, Utah State, Missouri, there is no trying to slow that game down. They're both high tempo teams, top 15 offensively, efficiency wise. They do not like to run the shot clock down. The number's 155, but out of pure entertainment, I'm hoping for a 98 to 95 final for Utah State. So we're going to take the over 155, going against the big number.
Nice.
And you did already plug your upset, but
Yeah. So being that we got the brackets and the betting out of the way, I want to talk Final Four picks. I guess I started with my partner first. So you wanna.
Oh, yeah, put my money where my mouth is, huh?
Yeah, let's see what you got.
Yeah, there's so much good in the South, but I really can't look at that bracket and not see Alabama coming and see Alabama not coming out of it. So I'm gonna be lame in the South and take Bama.
Bama.
The East, there's so much sketch in here. I really don't want to see them go to the Final Four, but I just think as we hit on multiple times, Duke is just hot at the right time. They got the youth, they got the energy behind them, they got the momentum. I'll take Duke out of the East, and that is just as we just tore a new one about 3 times over. That is the easiest bracket, the easiest region in this whole bracket. So I'll take Bama, I'll take Duke. Midwest. Oh, do I go a little Cinderella in this one? I'll go, you know what? I'll go Cinderella in here and go with Kent State. Let's see him go against Drake. Let's see him burst Houston's bubble, and let's say Texas is really beat up by the time they get to them. And I'll take the upset special out of here with Kent. And then in the West, who do I want out of here? I'll go UCLA. I'll go three chalk. Well, Not really, I guess. Two chalk. Two chalk, Duke and Kent.
Nice. Shad, what we got for our final four picks?
All right. I think the easy one that pretty much everybody's picking is Alabama. So I got them coming out of the South, beating Arizona in the Elite Eight. For my Midwest, this was probably the hardest one to pick. I do have Houston getting upset in the Elite Eight. In the Elite Eight. I do have Texas winning it. For my East, I know I'm going against what you guys have been saying. I do think, like I said, Purdue has the best player in college basketball this year, unstoppable, scoring, like 24 and 13. So I got Purdue, beating Marquette. And then in the West, this was really a toss-up to me. I was really juggling three teams that kind of could come out of the West. I picked UCLA, but I have UCLA beating UConn in the Elite Eight, and I had UConn beating Kansas, in the Sweet 16. So I think either one of those three teams can win it, but I'm going with UCLA just because it seemed like they might have an easier road, and I don't think Gonzaga makes it that far to challenge them.
Greg might be very happy with you.
Good looks for that, Shad. Greg, what we got?
All right, so I will start over in the South. One thing, so I'm going to take Alabama here, but I will say this: as I touched on earlier, Arizona, who I do think they will face, had good potential to face in the Elite Eight. The only concern I have with Bama is the whole, something we haven't touched on too much, the whole Brandon Miller situation. The media is good. The media attention to this is going to go up tenfold in the NCAA tournament. So I wonder, I really do wonder, does that start to get to them at some point? I can't say it's not a fact, but I do say that if Miller's proven anything at this point, he's been pretty immune to it, and he's been fired up. So I'm going to take Alabama to get out of that, although I do have some concern about that. I'll take Alabama there. If I go over to the Midwest, I kind of have to stick to my guns here. I know Texas is hot and they're the hot pick, and I think Houston man for man is still. I think they're just the most complete team in this. I love Sampson as a coach. I think they can manage that side of the bracket easier than Texas. So I'm going to take Houston over there to go home to play in their hometown of Houston. Over in the East, this is brutal. I don't like being honest. I want to be Pinocchio here. I have to take Duke out of this. I really think they got a favorable draw to this. And I despise saying this, but I honestly do. I think they have a really good road to get there. And again, the Filipowski thing, he gives them a toughness that I haven't seen in a while. I'm going to go Duke, unfortunately. Over in the West, they said that's a gauntlet of a bracket. The one thing, and this is actually not just as I wasn't being biased on the Duke pick, which I hate, I did take them. I'm not using it here. I'm actually going to take UConn, and for this reason. When I look at that bracket, as hard as it is, I think their first 2-round games are good matchups for UConn. So I think the size will get to Iona. I think the winner of St. Mary's or VCU, UConn physically is going to be too much for those teams. I think talent-wise, size-wise, I think UConn is going to get out of that bracket. So I'm going to take UConn there. That then shapes up to, we're going to have Alabama versus Houston. This is a tough one for me. I think the talent-wise for Bama, you know what? Call this part my heart on this one. I'm going to I don't, correct from wrong. The South is playing the Midwest. I'm forgetting which one is.
South plays East.
Sorry, South plays East. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm going to have Bama. I'm going to have Bama beat Duke. And that's not pure bias. I think the talent level of Alabama is just higher than Duke, so I think they'll get out of that. I am going to actually pick UConn to make the title. I think that size. I think they're close to their best bowl again. I'm going to take UConn to make the title game. And unfortunately for my Huskies, I think Alabama. I think that talent level is just too much. I think Brandon Miller is probably going to dominate the tournament. He's going to be the best player in it, and oftentimes that's a deciding factor. So I hate to say it, but I think Duke makes the Final Four, and it's roll tide at the end.
Yeah, I'm riding Bama too.
Oh, I don't think I said my pick, my national championship pick.
Yeah,
I didn't
who's your
either.
national-
I didn't either until just now.
All right, so yeah, let's go through that. Chase, who you said?
Bama.
Bama. Greg, you said Bama as well.
Yeah, reluctantly.
Shad, who you got?
I got UCLA.
UCLA winning the whole thing?
Yeah, I got them beating Bam on the championship.
Nice.
Partner, what about you? Did
I-
you want anything? What's yours?
Let's see. Because I love Oral. It's going Oral Roberts.
Oh my God.
You heard it here first.
Throw in the
send them.
darts. Throw in the darts. Throw the darts on the chalkboard.
Shad, I wanted to pick UCLA, and I was going into up until 2 weeks ago. I was with you on them, and I would have, but that Clark injury to me is big. I just I hate it because I root for them. I love Jaquez and Williams, but I think somewhere along that line that he's a big loss, really big loss. But again, they have that fearsome twosome, so they're yeah.
You think he'll be back at any point?
No, they rolled him out. He's done. He's done. Yeah, because they said at first it didn't look good because you saw him when he got hurt a couple weeks, or I guess it was like a week ago. He was already in a boot, and you saw him like kind of in tears on the sideline, and you kind of got a feeling like that's not. So it's an Achilles injury. They didn't say he tore it per se, but yeah. And then a couple days later, they ruled him out for the tourney, unfortunately. Yeah, because it's a shame because that team really was peaking at the right time, and he's a big factor. Not that they can't win without him, but obviously it's a big loss. Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out with us on this college episode. We got into a bunch of things: brackets, gambling, Final Four selections. So if you find any of that stuff handy or want to challenge us on any of those things, hit us up on our socials at Hoops Boys Pod on both Instagram and Twitter. Let's chop it up and discuss it. But until next time, it's been Hoops Boys Pod. Peace. Kobe.